This video is on problem solving, word problems involving the distance formula. The distance formula, let me shrink this a little bit, if you're not familiar with it, is distance equals the rate times the time. Distance is how far you go. I'll say travel. The rate is can be the speed. And then time pretty much speaks for itself. So we'll start with some easier distance problems, and again I have the formula written up top. And here you will notice that it says you have 45 miles per hour times 3 hours. So the question might be, how far have you gone? And so in order to solve this distance equals rate times time problem, you would just multiply 45 times 3, which would give you 135. And then your units turn out to be miles. That's how far you've gone in 3 hours. If you go 65 miles per hour for 8 hours, you just go ahead and grab your calculator. And 65 times 8 is 520 miles. You might be told that you go 52 miles per hour times a half hour. Well, a half hour you would change to a 0.5 on a calculator, or you would divide that 52 by 2, and either way you get 26 miles. So those were the easy ones. Let's look at some that are a little more challenging. I'll let you read this word problem for a bit. Alright, so now we have a real word problem. Sally traveled from Albany to Syracuse on Saturday. The trip took 3.5 hours and she traveled at an average rate of 62 miles per hour. How many miles did Sally travel? So the number one thing to recognize when you're reading this problem is that you are using the distance formula, and then identify your variables as it says. Well, we don't know the distance, that's what we're looking for. And the rate is always something per something. So in this case it's 62 miles per hour. And then it says the time we travel is 3.5 hours. Sorry, this is messy. Alright, then it says to substitute the proper variable into the proper equation. And so the distance we'll leave as a d because that's what we're looking for. The rate is 62 and 3.5 is our hours. And you know the distance final will end up to be miles. And then just take your calculator and multiply 62 times 3.5, and I get 217 miles. Alright, let's try another one. Bob took a 7-hour bicycle trip. In all, he traveled 112 miles. What was his average rate of speed in miles per hour? Take a couple seconds actually and do step 1. Fill in the variables where they belong. The time was 7 hours and he traveled 112 miles. So that's your distance. In this case you're looking for your rate of speed. So that's your question mark. You know you're using the distance formula. So substitute in what you know, and your time is 7 hours, and then you need to solve this like any one-step equation by dividing both sides by 7, and then 112 divided by 7 is 16. So your rate is 16 miles per hour, or you could write it as a fraction, however you want to finish that up. I would like you to try these last two problems, so go ahead and pause the video and follow the steps we did before, and make sure to watch your unit. Alright, pause the video now. Pause the video if you need to look at this longer, but we will move on to a challenge problem. It says a man drove 45 miles per hour for 3 hours, and then 60 miles per hour for another 2.5 hours. What was the total distance the man traveled? There's a couple ways you can figure this out. You can do it using the formula, but you can check yourself also by drawing a little picture or writing a little chart. Take a few minutes and try to figure this out. Pause the video. I'm going to look at this as two problems in one. First of all, it said the man drove 45 miles an hour for 3 hours. Well, he's going to travel a certain distance for that speed. And then he said that he went 60 miles an hour for another 2.5 hours. Well, that's a different distance. And so if I add these two distances together, I'll get the total distance he went. So I'll do two equations. You could do it all in one. So for the first scenario in red, he went 45 miles per hour for 3 hours. So that distance is 135 miles. Then, I'll do it over here, the one in blue, he went 60 miles an hour for 2.5 hours. And so when you multiply that out, you'll get 150 miles there. So then you're going to take the two numbers and add them together to come up with a total distance of 285. Oh my gosh. I make it look easy, don't I? 285 miles. So your number one job in word problems is to figure out if there's a formula that you can use, and then decide what you're given in the problem and attack it however you need to in order to solve it. There are always more than one way to do problems. Just show your work and you'll be okay.